Ok, bueno. 1, 2, 3.
Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Bienvenidos a Science y Fierros, el podcast en donde hablaremos de entrenamiento, bodybuilding, nutrición, siempre desde una perspectiva crítica, integral y evolutiva. Yo soy San y estoy muy contenta de estar el día de hoy aquí con Laura Placeres. Hola Lau, ¿cómo estás? En este podcast diferente para todos. Sí, me gustaría decirle a todos los que nos están escuchando que este episodio va a ser un poquito diferente justo porque va a ser en inglés. Nuestra invitada habla inglés, entonces igual los invitamos a poner los subtítulos si ustedes gustan para que puedan también disfrutar de este episodio que va a ser de mucho valor y yo sé que van a aprender bastante de ella, de Loz. Y bueno, nada más decir el tema, será sobre quién es un culturista y cómo sacar el mayor provecho a tus fases de ganancia muscular. Y ahora sí, Lau, te dejo.
Muy bien, Sam, muy diferente de entrada por los problemitas que tuvimos ahorita para poder hacer este podcast, pero que se vea que las ganas de hacerlo son muchas y a pesar de todas las problemáticas, pues aquí estamos. Y bueno, el día de hoy tenemos un episodio muy especial. Para mí es muy importante la persona que tenemos el día de hoy, por muchas razones, pero creo que el mensaje que ella difunde, lo que ella representa como una atleta, como una culturista, como una preparadora, es muy importante de saberlo y puede beneficiar especialmente a mujeres que de pronto nos encontramos con ciertas problemáticas en cuanto a la ganancia de masa muscular, en cuanto a la off-season, los problemas también de imagen corporal que se suelen suscitar en estas etapas y creo que bueno, ella nos va a beneficiar mucho. Eh, Acabo de caer en cuenta que todo esto lo estamos diciendo en español y ella pues habla inglés, así que si te parece bien, lo mismo que estoy diciendo ahorita lo voy a decir en inglés para que pues ella lo entienda. Well, what I said before, I'm gonna say it now in English. So Loz, which is our guest for today's podcast, can understand what I just said. And basically, she's one of the people that I admire the most in the fitness industry. One of the reasons is the approach she has on all things bodybuilding, but especially for me, the way she approaches the muscle gaining phases, the off season, which we all know is a crucial part of the bodybuilding journey. And she's definitely someone that has a lot to share and a really good message to spread. Especially for women. That doesn't mean that men don't have issues or troubles when it comes to the muscle gaining phases, but as we know, usually women are the ones that struggle the most with gaining weight, gaining body fat, concerns about losing the feminine side, and all things that I'm sure we will touch on as the conversation goes on. So first of all, thank you so much, Loz, for being here. You're truly an inspiration for me, for Sam, and we both feel so honored to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I've got a huge smile on my face because, yeah, to hear that really is amazing. And I want to thank both of you as well for really having me on. Any platform where I can talk and I can reach people, it means everything to me. So yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for the kind words as well.
No, Loz, welcome to our episode, and really is an honor to have you with us. And firstly, we wanted to ask you, for the ones that don't know you yet, we would like you to introduce yourself and why and how you got started with bodybuilding.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently where I'm at right now, I am obviously a natural female bodybuilder. I've been in a current off season for 3 years. So I'm doing a 5-year off season at the moment, 3 years into that. I'm also a online coach. I specialize in coaching natural female athletes, although I do coach a few males. I also coach a few like non-competitive athletes as well. And that's something I've been doing for 3 years now. So I started that in 2020 around the sort of like lockdown time, actually. But for me, my journey with bodybuilding is something that I could probably go on for a very long time. So I'll try and keep it short. But essentially, bodybuilding really has been something for me that it means a lot more than just training or just growing my physique. It's been a huge part of my life, and it wouldn't be an over exaggeration for me to say that it really saved my life. When I grew up, when I was a lot younger, sort of in my early teens, I really struggled with my body image. I struggled with my mental health. I actually struggled with eating disorders for quite a few years, and I struggled to kind of find that understanding of myself as a person and to find purpose and to understand how I could, instead of making myself the smallest version of myself or trying to kind of make less of me, instead, how can I be the best version of myself? And how can I learn to love myself through different phases and to just consistently be better and better and see the potential that I have? And that was really where I found bodybuilding, and bodybuilding changed everything for me. So I've been bodybuilding since I was 16, 17. It was something that I fell into really quite naturally. So I first started going to the gym with one of my boyfriends at the time. And I was very, very shy at going into the gym. So you could look at me now and say, like, I look so confident when I train. And, you know, this has taken me a long time to get to where I'm at now. But when I first started training, I was terrified. You know, I was one of your typical girls who didn't want to go in the weight training area and was scared and insecure of what people would think. So I was very grateful that I had friends at the time who made me feel more comfortable in those environments. And as soon as I started weight training, I loved it. You know, when I was in there, I was getting after it. I just had this connection with what I was doing that was something I'd never found in anything else. And I'd been a part of, you know, team sports and different things growing up, but to have something that was just for me, that I could focus on myself, have that time for myself, better myself, it was everything. And it changed so much to just have, you know, those couple hours every day or most days where I could be present with me, I could progress and just do something that I loved. And it was amazing. So started that at a relatively young age. And I really just focused on just training for a few years. And then by the time I came to 2019, 2020, I was like, you know what, I do want to give this competing thing a go. And I was still very insecure at the time, and I wasn't sure if I was good enough to compete yet or whatever it was. And that was actually when I moved to Ultraflex. So before that, I wasn't training at Ultraflex. I started going to university, and I went to a university that was near Ultraflex because I wanted to train there. I wanted to be in that environment. And that changed a lot for me, because being surrounded by honestly, like the best athletes in the UK and some of the best athletes in the world, it was scary. It was scary, but it was what I needed to see what you could do. And for me as well, to have people who had maybe been in my position before and could say, you know what, you're capable of doing anything that you want to do if you put your mind to it. And previously I'd been very isolated in my bodybuilding journey. So to have that really changed a lot of things. So that was when I'd say I started getting really into like actually going to be a competitive bodybuilder. And then I competed for the first time in 2020, where I actually competed as a bikini athlete, which to be honest was where I was at the time for the amount of muscularity level that I had. I suppose I maybe could have done figure or toned figure in like natural federations, but I didn't know a thing about natural bodybuilding really at the time. The only bodybuilders I'd followed had been in the IFBB or in the NPC, and you guys will know, like, the size of the bikini girls in the NPC, they're like women's physique almost in natural federations, especially with how lean they get. So that was where I ended up. But I came out of that prep and I was like, this isn't me. Like, it's amazing, and I look up to those girls incredibly, but I knew I didn't want to go assisted, and I really wanted to compete in classes that reflected the way that I see bodybuilding and the way that I train. And, like, I didn't want to not be able to train my quads or not be able to train my chest or all of these things. I just wanted to be the biggest, best version of myself. So that's why I then took some time away, and that's when my off season started, really. So I've been in off season since then, and my long-term goal as a bodybuilder is to hopefully compete in women's bodybuilding one day. That's where I'd like to be, but it'll take me time to get there. That's the long-term goal. If I have to step on stage and, figure on in the meantime, is what it is. But that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And my next goal really is to compete in 2025. So I know that was a bit of a long introduction, but it hopefully helps people kind of see, a bit of a background to myself as an individual and as an athlete too.
No, that's a really good answer, and I wasn't hoping for less. I really like that you took the time to explain everything since how you got started, how you were feeling at the moment, the first time you stepped in a gym, because I think that reflects the way many, especially women, feel the first time we get into the gym, for many reasons, but the ideas that we have about what it means to bodybuild, what it means to be a bodybuilder can sometimes be a little bit skewed, in the sense that, for example, in Mexico, there are still plenty of people that think that as a woman, if you start lifting weights, you're gonna go like super big and almost like the shape of a IFBB pro women's bodybuilder, which we know it isn't the case. And also, many people don't know that there's this side, this fruit of natural bodybuilding, and it can be a really lovely journey to go on, especially as a woman. I think bodybuilding can teach plenty of good things to all people, but mainly women. Now, I recall one of your recent reels that you did, and you also ended up doing a podcast episode, which we will for sure link on the bio here for people to listen to. But you talked about what did it mean to be a bodybuilder, which are the traits, the behaviors that a bodybuilder has and develops over time. I would really like you to expand on that. So basically, what does someone needs to achieve, if there's something to achieve or to do or to have, to call him or herself a bodybuilder?
Yeah, so I think it's something that's not so black and white. There's not one correct answer to this is the definition of a bodybuilder. If you do not fit this definition, you don't count. And I think a lot of people, as humans, we like to put people into boxes, and we like to say this is the criteria for this. But I think that for everyone, their definition of maybe what makes them a bodybuilder is so different, because you can meet some people who, take a very balanced approach with bodybuilding, and they may still be bodybuilders. You have some people who are extremely strict, and every single day is bodybuilding for them, and they're still bodybuilders as well. I think bodybuilding sits on a spectrum, but in terms of actually being a bodybuilder, to validate yourself as that, because that was kind of what the reel was about, is that a lot of people, especially women, feel like they cannot validate themselves as bodybuilders, especially if they haven't competed yet. They feel silly doing that. Whereas a lot of men will go to the gym for 2 weeks and they'll be like, yeah, I'm a bodybuilder now, let's go, So I think realistically, what makes you a bodybuilder is truly loving the act of bodybuilding, which to me is training, being passionate about training, and working towards a physique-based goal, which really for most bodybuilders should be building muscle for the most part. And that's kind of why I also think it's important to think about that, because, you know, I think so many people feel as though they can only call themselves bodybuilders when they're lean or when they've competed. But competing, yes, that's a competitive side to bodybuilding. But actual bodybuilding is building your body. Like that's what it is, you know? So if you spend time training, eating, acting like a bodybuilder every day and being passionate and putting a huge amount of your effort, you know, the amount of effort that you want to put in can be different for different people. You know, as I said, some people it's their whole life. Some people it's 75% of their life, because they also have to manage having a family or having a specific job. And that's cool as well. But the majority of your focus on a day-to-day is driven towards your bodybuilding goals, you know, your journey. And you can do that for years without necessarily competing and still be a bodybuilder. You know, I coach quite a few females who they bodybuild. Like, trust me, they train hard and they are dedicated to the bodybuilding process, probably more than some competitors, but they don't want to compete, and that's cool, but they're still bodybuilders. And they'll sometimes say to me like, Loz, I don't know if I'm really a bodybuilder. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, you've been checking in with me for 3 years now and you train like an absolute legend and you always are on your meals. You're always doing everything you need to. Of course you're a bodybuilder, you know? And I just think that it's important to have that differentiation, because there's so many people who just don't feel like they kind of belong in the industry. And it's such a wonderful industry when you can become a part of it. And once you kind of actually give yourself that acknowledgement and validation, it opens up so many doors. It opens up so many opportunities to meet amazing people and to feel a part of something. So yeah, that's kind of how I would say like what I would encompass as like a bodybuilder and what it takes to go into that.
Loz, and besides the acquisition of muscle tissue, what will be other benefits of pushing body weight up during an off season for you?
Yeah, so in terms of like for a female specifically as well, I think there's a lot of things of not being afraid of pushing your body weight. Yes, like I said, the muscle tissue is kind of the main thing, because we need to have body fat in order to also add body tissue. And the biggest thing that goes along with that is the strength gains. Like, it's getting strong in the gym. And of course, this goes in line with muscle gain as well. But I do think that there's something really special about spending time at heavier body weights and just loving training, like really focusing on the training. Like, yes, the training relates to the muscle gain as well, but enjoying that, and that really solidifies a huge love for bodybuilding in itself. That's one thing. There's of course the hormonal benefits for females as well, of actually sitting at what is healthy body composition, because so many females will want to be, you know, this lean and toned look, and they don't realize that that's actually just not what females are supposed to look like, or most of us. You know, some females will have a bit of a leaner genetic set point, and that's cool, but most females won't. So they need to actually spend time in positions where their body feels healthy, their body feels good. And you know what? You're probably going to have a bit of belly fat. You might have a little bit of fat around your glutes, and that's cool. That's okay. That's how we're meant to look. So being there is important. And then that also kind of relates to then being confident at like basically holding more body fat, you know, learning to love your body in those positions. And that's something that I have gained so much benefit from spending so long in heavier body compositions, is I've learned to love my body and love my physique outside of like bodybuilding critique, because I think that the two are very separate. And I think you have to separate the two. You have to separate, okay, I'm critiquing my physique from a bodybuilding standpoint, but that doesn't mean that I don't still love my body, you know? So I think that being able to spend times where you can appreciate your body for that is really important. And you don't become so attached to having to be in lean body compositions all the time. You just gain a multitude of benefits. And then of course, there's also just like enjoying life, like, which I think is also important, and being able to like not feel like you constantly have to look a certain way or eat this and that. You can actually kind of relax a little bit more, which is important. You know, if your stress levels are elevated all the time, you're also not going to make amazing progress. So if you can actually enjoy time to like be with family, be with friends, or do different things, or travel, or whatever it is for you, that's also something that I think really positively influences your bodybuilding journey as well.
I think that's spot on, and I really like how you explain this part, like, of dissociation, like your bodybuilder self from your own self. I think that's a crucial part, and in my experience, I found the most, not only progress, but also like joy of bodybuilding in general during the gaining phases, and having like those really or longer gaining phases in which I'm pushing like body weight up, and sometimes to places that, to be honest, can be scary at points, because you, as everything, if you've never been there, there's like this concern of how it may look like. But exposing yourself to that can, in my experience, as I said before, help to solve like many body image issues that we may have, not only because of bodybuilding, because I think sometimes those issues have started like prior to bodybuilding. In the cases of many women, I know for myself that was the case. But yeah, just wanted to touch on that. And with all like this evidence that what's the optimal rate of weight gain, like, you know, like there are some, like, people have their opinions and based also on their experiences, but many people and coaches, and good coaches and really experienced and successful ones, they say you must be like in this range of percentage of weight gain. And sometimes I found that's sometimes unrealistic, especially for women, because, you know, you have the menstrual cycle in which some weeks it's gonna go like really high, and also what you just touched on, like the hormonal health, and the fact that just women stand or stay in a higher body fat percentage in compared to men. So how do you handle this? Because I know maybe that's your case, that many of the athletes that come to you are like, oh no, but Loz, I don't want to gain that fast, or I don't want to gain that much weight, because, you know, here's this paper and here's this coach that says if I go this fast or if I go this high, I'm gonna gain so much fat, and maybe I'm not gonna gain as much muscle, and it's gonna be detrimental for my bodybuilding purposes or even my health purposes. How do you handle this?
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because we have like evidence-based coaching, and of course we want to apply like an evidence-based approach, but you also have to be like anecdotal, and you have to pay attention to the individual and what matters. And females especially, so many people say it, like, we're not just small men, you know, we have to be coached differently. And I think when you're looking at rate of gains, and also just generally how high body fat has to sit, like, take an example of like somebody coming out of prep, like the way that you might manage the rate of gain with somebody who is leaner or has a leaner start point is going to be very different to somebody who obviously has a slightly heavier start point. So like if somebody is coming out of prep, they need to have a pretty fast rate of gain for at least 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how lean they are. And then from there, the rate of gain from them might be a little bit faster until it starts to taper off. Now, of course, when you're sitting at kind of those main off-season points, you don't want the rate of gain to be super fast, because obviously if it's really, really quick and you're like a pound, 2 pounds every week, it's a little bit too fast. And you want to be careful of that, so that you can still have longevity in that phase of pushing, so that you don't start to gain body fat that does ultimately become unproductive. You know, if you start to notice that you have like poor blood glucose, or training performance is suffering, or digestion is suffering, etc., then you do have to manage that. But I think when you're looking at, as you mentioned, the rate of gain that can be bigger and especially more fluctuating. So sometimes a female might check in and their rate of gain for that week has been like 0.5 of a pound. The next week, it could be 3 pounds, you know, it could be massive. And this is where I like to actually look at like bi-weekly or monthly rate of gains. So rather than looking on a weekly basis or looking on a daily basis, it's more so looking over those like longer time periods to say, okay, the main thing we're paying attention to is that the rate of gain is trending upwards at a gradual pace. And with this, are we seeing the things that we need to see, which are like performance improvements, like body composition shifts a little bit, but you can't, I think as a female, you have to, the main thing that I look at with an athlete when we are looking at physique shots in an off season is body composition still okay? Because you're not going to be seeing massive changes in terms of muscularity on a weekly basis, especially as body fat starts to, you know, increase more and more. So I think that that's where you have to go, okay, is performance good? Because if performance is good, we're adding on muscle tissue. And is body comp still relatively okay? It's not too messy. Like, no, it's not. Okay, great. That's what we need to pay attention to. And are you going to experience some circumstances of feeling uncomfortable? Like, yes, but we still know we're in a good spot. Like, your training is still good. You're still making great progress. You're not noticing any negative effects of really poor digestion or really low appetite. Like, this is ultimately just where you need to be. Your body fat here is to fuel the most important thing, which is you training well in the gym and getting strong. And then really the only place where then you have to be a little bit more protective with the rate of gain is when you're getting close to, you know, setting up a prep for that individual, and you have to make sure that they have, you know, a good prep start point. But honestly, the rate of gains is something that I do see vary between so many different females. You know, some females will experience a much faster rate of gain. For some of them, it might be a little bit slower. And it really depends on their environment, their hormonal makeup, just generally how their body responds. So I think you have to take it into consideration with the person you're working with, as always. But continuously, and I do this every week with a lot of my girls, is just remind them of their goals, because we all need that every now and then. Is we have moments where we think, oh God, the body fat is piling on and maybe I don't feel super comfortable today. And you need someone to remind you like why you're doing this, what you're working for, and to remember all of the amazing things that also come with you having that additional body fat. Because I think we're like programmed to see more body weight and more body fat as a bad thing. So we naturally react like, no, the scales are going up. And I think we have to try and actually, you know, see that number on the scales, or to see the other things outside of the numbers on the scales and actually like reflect positively on them. And I always try and make sure my clients do that, is that when they check in with me, it's like, look at the wins that you can take from this week that are not negatives to do with your body weight scale. There are actually really good things you've experienced this week as a result of body weight going up as well.
Now, Loz, talking about contest prep and competing for you, which are the things you would like to see an athlete wanting to compete for the first time in terms of experience, muscle size, with foods, etc.?
Yeah, there's definitely a good few tick boxes that need to be there for an athlete to compete. Now, most of the athletes that I take on board for a prep, I will have worked with for a good amount of time before they do a prep. Because I need to, honestly, whenever possible, have a good relationship with them. And I always say this to any athlete, it doesn't need to be my athlete, but if you're going to do a prep and you want to compete, find the person that you want to work with and build a relationship with them first, because your coach can coach you so well if they know you very well. Because prepping is not just about dropping the calories and pushing you more into a deficit. It's about knowing the person, knowing the athlete, and being able to manage things carefully for them. So that's one thing that's important. And of course, for me, I then know a lot about my athletes before I prep them. And the tick boxes, kind of like you've just given an examples of there's a few things. So there is one of the main things is just simply, have you spent a good amount of time just enjoying bodybuilding, like just enjoying bodybuilding before you even think about doing a competition prep? Because a lot of people think that a competition prep is like entry level to bodybuilding, but it's not. Like, the entry level to bodybuilding is like just bodybuilding. So I think spending a good few years, especially if you're a younger athlete, I really, really always recommend that you've spent at least 2, 3, 4 years just training. It doesn't even need to be like you've been in a really intense growth phase, but maybe you've just been at maintenance or a moderate surplus, but you've not been really dieting. Because otherwise, what you see a lot of the time is people go from being in like yo-yo diets or constantly dieting to then suddenly finding bodybuilding and going, okay, cool, I want to do, a prep. And they're not in a sensitive spot or in a good spot to respond to a deficit. They're probably carrying loads of fatigue from dieting in the past. They maybe have even some metabolic damage. Their thyroid hormone could not be in a good place. There could be other hormonal variables that are not in a great place. Touching on hormonal variables, having a healthy menstrual cycle is extremely important before you prep. And of course, some people are on contraception, and that makes it a bit difficult to see where the menstrual cycle is at, but that's the individual's choice. But if you're not on contraception and you can see where your menstrual cycle is, it's really important that you have, I honestly would always want to see like a year's worth. I know some coaches will say, 4 cycles is enough for you to start prepping. I think really having like at least 12 months worth of having a regular menstrual cycle is important, because the likelihood is that cycle will go when you prep, and you want to make sure that your body is also then in a position for you to regain your menstrual cycle afterwards, and you're not just making your health worse and worse. You have to be careful of that as a female. So that's another thing there. Of course, a few other variables that are important are going to be, are you doing this for the right reasons? Do you genuinely want to do this for like self-development, or even just as like a bucket list goal and you want to do it, but you're not doing it because you feel like you have to prove your self-worth, or, because you feel like you just have to, there should be like a genuine enjoyment to want to prep, because otherwise you're going to be miserable. You're going to be absolutely miserable the whole time. And yes, a prep is hard. So don't make it like really hard for yourself by also combining it with something that you just don't have enjoyment of. Like, that's just not going to work well at all. And then the other things are obviously just making sure that you've got a good relationship with food. Absolutely. That needs to be in a good place. And this is why working with somebody prior to a prep is important, so that we can establish that they do have a good relationship with food. They've probably spent a good amount of time also building up food to a good level through an off season, or even through, building up through food after a pre-prep diet, whatever that situation is. And that's really where, like, honestly, setting up a good start point for an athlete, if I know, okay, they're ready to prep, I now need to make sure that their start point for the prep is as good as it can possibly be. And this is where, for the most part, a lot of females start their preps way too soft. And when you work with a coach in advance and they're mapping out your timeline, you can make sure that you have either a pre-prep diet, or simply you're just managing that rate of gain leading into the prep. And that's what I was kind of just talking about, is making sure that in the final like 2 months of your off season, you're not suddenly gaining like 10 pounds, because that's 10 pounds that you then need to pull off again at the start of prep. And I've seen it before. I've had a situation where, say somebody in the final week of their off season will put on 5 to 10 pounds because they've just eaten everything in sight. And then the prep starts, and then the first few weeks of prep are not really even prep. We're just trying to lose the body fat that they just gained, so it's like making sure that the start point for that athlete is good. And I know mentally they're in a good place to handle that, is really important. So there's definitely a lot of things that I think, you could do a whole episode in itself and talking about, circumstances that someone needs to be in. And there's different things that I can see from different people. Like I can really tell if someone is ready or not. And I'll be honest as well. You know, if I think someone's not ready, I will tell them. And, you know, the muscularity side of things, of course, is huge too. You need to make sure that you actually have enough muscle to grow. If you don't, and if you want to be competitive, I'd tell you if you need to spend more time in off season. You know, I'm not going to be a coach who just wants to prep people to simply have people on stage. I want people to actually present their best. And if that means you spending more time growing, I'll tell you need to spend more time growing. But yeah, there's so many different things, but I would say those are kind of the most important ones that, you know, jump out at me. And whenever you are considering, if anyone's listening to this who is considering prepping, like just speak to other people. And if you've assuming you have a coach, just you should have a call with your coach, you know, have a call with your coach, talk through all of these things and really make sure that you both understand what goes into that prep process and assess whether you are ready. And even if you are ready, is that something you're ready for next year? Is that something you're ready for in 2 years' time or 3 years' time? And just the more that and the sooner that you can create an understanding of what is required for you to do that, I think the better.
That's a great answer. And one thing that you touched on earlier on the podcast when you were talking about how you got started competing and the fact that you decided to go for bikini mainly because you were competing in a non-tested fed, but then you said what I would really like to do is women's bodybuilding because I love getting everything huge and training everything. And I know for me, and I will adventure myself to talk for Sand as well because I train her. We both like to see like everything grow. We enjoy upper body sessions and training the arms and that. But with that, how do you go about advising or guiding someone in which what division is going to be best for her to compete in? Because we know size and frame is definitely important, but I think it also comes to these adherence aspects in terms of the training and even the posing.
Yeah, there's a few different things that go into what is the best division for that person. The first thing you can't avoid with bodybuilding is what is your natural structure and what does your natural build look like? Because I have, like, for example, I coach someone you might know, she's called Megan Codling. She competed as a bodybuilding athlete. She could not have done figure if she wanted to. She has too much muscle anyway, but her shape was not made for that class. So there's certain people that you can look at and instantly you can be like, you're built for figure or you're built for bodybuilding. And that can kind of jump out at you quite instantly. And some people will naturally fit into certain categories. That's not to say that they can't grow into different categories if they want to, but they might have one category that really is their strong point, irrelevant of the muscularity level that they have, purely based on shape, purely based on structure, especially for categories like figure, for example, where that X frame is like everything. So if you naturally have very wide clavicles, you have really good quad insertions that make you look super sweepy, like that's maybe where you're going to be. And it also then comes down to like the muscle maturity, the muscle density that you have for those specific divisions. And that's kind of like with myself, as much as I want to do women's bodybuilding, I know that when I compete next time, I might not be able to get as hard as I need to get for women's bodybuilding. So it might be a case of me doing like women's bodybuilding and also doing figure because that's where I might be competitive, that kind of thing. So you have the kind of initial analysis of that person. What's their structure? What's their current muscularity level? What does it look like they're going to be able to get into condition-wise when they prep? And a huge indicator of that often is somebody's age. So often the older someone is, the more conditioned that they can get. So prepping somebody who is like 23 versus someone who's 40, you know, there's probably going to be a bit of a difference with how they look on the way down. And that's something you can obviously communicate with that individual, because if you get somebody who is like 20 years old, they have very immature looking muscle and they say, you know, I want to do women's physique or women's bodybuilding, you can say, okay, cool. But it's going to take us a little bit of time to get the maturity we need. If that's the goal you have, this is what the timeline looks like. And it's probably going to be 5-6 years until you can do that. So that's where then you talk with the person, you say, this is where you are now. Where do you want to compete? What's your goals? Where do you enjoy competing? Because ultimately, everyone has a point where they can compete. Like for myself, I could compete in bikini. But whether it was where I wanted to compete, maybe not necessarily. But that's where you then go, okay, do you really want to actually get the experience of getting on stage and enjoy that? Or would it be a lot better for you to actually just compete in the class that you really want to compete in and purely focus on that? Because an example of this would be, say you have a young girl who wants to compete in figure, and at the moment their muscularity level is like bikini level muscle, and you say like, look, if you want to compete in figure, it's going to be maybe 5-6 years until you can compete in figure. And if that's what you want to do, amazing. But another option is that maybe you compete in bikini first, just to give yourself the experience of actually undergoing a prep, stepping on stage, seeing if you enjoy it, because you sometimes run the risk of somebody giving themselves 5-6 years in an off season without ever stepping on stage. And then they never get that stage experience, or they don't actually know if they enjoy prepping or if they can do it. And then they build up all this pressure, and they've never also actually seen what they look like in stage lean condition, which is kind of important in some situations. But I think that's where you then you have a discussion with that person. Because like I have some girls who, like, I've had that conversation and they said, Loz, I do not want to get on stage in bikini. Like, I will wait as long as needed. And that's what they would enjoy doing so much more. And that's perfectly fine by me, because at the end of the day, what they really enjoy the most is kind of the most important thing. But you also have to sprinkle it in with a little bit of honesty. You know, you have to be honest, and you have to say like, look, I know that you really want to do this, but I have to then advise them with what I think it is genuinely going to be the best for them as an athlete, and what's also realistic based on where they're at that point in time. So it's a mixture of different things. And I think there's no right or wrong answer, because, you know, as much as even for myself, I can look back and say, I didn't enjoy competing in bikini, and I didn't at all. But I also gained so much from that prep that I wouldn't change that. And I think that I wouldn't be the athlete that I am today without doing a prep and finding what I didn't enjoy, if that makes sense. So I think you always learn from different things. There's no right and wrong, but as long as you have that mixture of, you know, knowing what's right for an athlete, and also mixing that with what allows them to ultimately enjoy bodybuilding the most, because at the end of the day, we bodybuild because we love it. You know, that's kind of the mixture that I think is really important when finding a division for an athlete.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. But finally, Loz, we would like to know what are your current goals as an athlete? You said you wanted to compete in 2025, but how's your off season going?
Yeah, it's going really good. So as I said, I'm about 3 years into my off season now. I started my off season in September 2020, and this is the reason why, like, I've also taken so long, is that, and I'm sure you guys will know this, is that off seasons aren't just purely spent growing. You know, you have some diet phases here and there. So I've not been in a surplus for 3 years, but I've been in my like off season for 3 years, and it's gone really well so far. I have to say it's been the best 3 years of my life, for a multitude of different reasons. It's also given me such a great opportunity to also grow my coaching and focus attention to other things, which, by the way, as well, for anyone like listening who feels like they have to prep for business reasons as well, because I know a lot of people who feel like they can't get clients or they can't build a coaching business because they're not super shredded and they don't have stage pictures. That was a legitimate concern that I had when I decided I was going to take a long time away from the stage. I said to AJ, I was like, how am I going to get clients if I'm not competing? And he was like, you'll see, you know. And I think that it's a good thing to like embrace like being where we're at and not feeling like we have to do all these different things for like building your business or building a reputable name. So if anyone's having those concerns, like don't feel like you have to look up to a specific image in order for you to still be good at your job or be good at the things that you're passionate about as well. So sorry, I've gone a bit off tangent there, but as I was saying, it's been a good 3 years so far, building up a number of different things. Right now I am in like 4 months into a phase of growing, which I did a diet phase earlier this year. And what this really looks like for me now, so my goal is to compete in 2025. And to a lot of people, when I speak to them about this, they'll say like, oh, you've still got another 2 years. But these next 2 years for me will be a large part of it kind of setting up my prep, because as you know, like you'll have seen in my posts and as I've spoken about today, I sit quite high in terms of body weight in my off season, because that's where I perform well. It's where I make amazing progress in the gym, of course, but it's not the body weight that I would start my prep at. I will start my prep much lighter than where I'm at right now. So for a reference, when I competed last, I was 95 pounds, which is about 43 kilos. And now I'm close to 140 pounds. So I'm like 45 pounds above my stage weight, which is like 20 kilos above my stage weight. But I can't start prep that far away from my stage weight, because the prep would be awful. It would be brutal. I'd have to lose like 45 pounds in one go, not what you want to be seeing. So what I'll be doing over this next year is I'll have another phase of growing, maybe a little bit of a tidy up phase, but around this time next year, I'll be in a pre-prep diet. So I'll be coming down to being a little bit leaner, so that when I start my prep in 2025, I'll probably be like 15 pounds lighter than I am right now. So I've still got a good, like probably 6 to 8 months of like really good, like being in a surplus ahead of me. And then it will be a case of really setting up the prep and getting me a little bit lighter. So whilst, as I said, people think 2025 is so far away, for me now it feels really close, because I know that it's kind of like, it's right around the corner. And people say like, oh, you know, the time will pass so quickly when you're in off season. You don't believe them, but it really does. It really does. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. 2025 is the goal. And honestly, I don't really have any expectations for myself in terms of where I'll place or even what category I'll do. I think next year I'll get a really good idea of how I start to look as I sit a little bit leaner, because you just don't know. You really don't know what muscle you built. You don't know how your shape is going to look, especially most females will feel like their shape changes a lot as body weight goes on. You don't see the ratio of your waist to everything else because there's body fat there. So I'll get a better idea of that really over this next year. But honestly, the goal in 25 is to come down into stage condition, present a look that I'm really proud of, which no matter where I place, no matter what shows I do, no matter if I come away with a medal or a trophy or not, I will be incredibly proud. I'll be proud of what I've been able to present for 5 years of work. And for me, it's obviously something that matters a lot for myself, because I want to show myself what I'm capable of, but it's way more important for me to hopefully be able to do that, to set an example and to hopefully have an impact on other females to show what they can do. Because if I can hopefully present progress over, 2020 to 2025, then I want other females to look at that and go like, that's possible, because I've not seen anyone else do that. I've not seen anyone take time away and really give their off-season everything and then show what's capable. So I'm just hoping I can kind of compare my bikini pictures to whatever I have on stage in 25, and that hopefully has an impact on other female athletes. I think that's my main goal really, with my season in 25.
You definitely have had impact in many female athletes, I'm sure, and I can talk for myself. I'm just gonna tell a little story about this. When I first saw your content, I remember it was a post of your highest body weight that you reached. I think it was like 165 or something around that, and I was really surprised of how well you looked, how amazing you looked. And then I was like, but she's tiny. I think she's like my size maybe. And then when I saw that you were, like, I'm 5'2", I think, in
4'10".
so, my girlfriend Gabby, who is always like, well, she's always encouraging me to go like heavier than past off seasons or growing phases, and she's always like, look, Loz is like this way, you need to go now to, like, I don't know, like 3 kg above what you went before, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to see, as you said, how that end product looks like, because definitely I don't know, at least I don't know anyone, especially a female, who has done that before. So
Loz is amazing.
you're truly an example, and that's the main reason why we wanted to have you here. And now we want to be respectful of your time. I know you have plenty of things to do, and we would really like to have you on again, maybe once you start your pre-prep diet, or anytime you're available. And now, if there's anything else you would want to add, or maybe to share where people can find you. I know, and yesterday I posted on my story on Instagram the huge value there is on the site you and AJ have built. So if you want to talk about that, and as a final note, here on the podcast, we like for our guests to recommend a book or something that they're reading, or they have read before. It can be a paper, or if that's not the case, whatever that gets you excited, that maybe it can be bodybuilding related, like a book or a paper or a movie, or it can be something like completely
whatever you want.
Whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a book. Maybe a series on Netflix, or whatever you want.
Or podcast.
Or a podcast,
There's so many things, but firstly, I want to say, like, honestly, a huge thank you to you guys for having me on, because you're amazing podcast hosts. I love to see what you guys are doing with what you're sharing with your podcast. It's amazing. And you've just been an absolute pleasure to talk to this evening. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been wonderful. In terms of things that I have to share, if anyone wants to find me at all, my Instagram is at Loz.v. My coaching is Team LV Fit. You can find that on Instagram or in my bio as well. If you want to join the hub for natural bodybuilding, please join or check out Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide. That's naturalbbworldwide.com. And you can also find us on Instagram. If you're watching, you can see
good.
the logo here I'm representing. But we have all sorts of training videos, content, education courses. It's something that myself and AJ have put a lot into, AJ especially, to create this platform for natural bodybuilding that just hasn't existed before. So definitely check that out if you want to find a bit more about the community. And in terms of anything to recommend, I listen to so much content, it's unbelievable. So it's definitely hard to think of something off the top of my head. Actually, I think one thing that's a very basic recommendation that probably so many people have heard of, there's 2 books that I think are really good for bodybuilders to read. They're not necessarily about training or nutrition or anything. The first one is Atomic Habits, which I think everyone knows.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it's really, really basic, but your routine and your habits in life and in bodybuilding are everything. Like, they make such a huge difference. And so if you struggle with routine, if you struggle with making things stick or understanding why your habits are so important, please read that. Another one is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which I'm sure you guys are nodding, so you know this one as well.
Yeah.
They're staples, but if you've not read them, like I know people go, oh yeah, I know that book or I've heard of it. But if you've not read it, read it, because they're just such great things for you to be able to understand about like routine habits and like stress management and all of these things that are just, they're so simple, but they make the world of difference to how you can feel on a daily basis and how you can view life and how you can view your bodybuilding process. And I actually probably spend more time looking at how I can develop myself as like an individual and my life in general, rather than like overly focusing on the bodybuilding things, because when you pay attention to all of like just the basic things on a day-to-day, it has great cross transfer into everything else. And I listen to a lot of things that are even, you know, non-bodybuilding related, but related to other sports, because I'm always interested to see how we can bring things that people take from other sports into bodybuilding as well. But yeah, again, I'm going off tangent. Those would probably be the two books I'd recommend, but I'm sure you've had plenty of people recommend those already.
Oh, thank you so much, Loz. Really, it has been such a pleasure for us, and I'm looking forward to see how your off-season continues, and if I can have like a final thought to leave here, I'm looking forward to another training video of you and AJ, or maybe just you, because I really like before training to see other people training hard, but especially women, because there's not so much content about that. And for anyone who hasn't looked how Loz trains, she goes like super hard, she's super focused, and yeah, that's also how here in the podcast we like to train. So yeah, that's the final thing that I would require from you, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next month.
There should be a new video coming out like next week or so keep your eyes peeled.
Thank you, Loz.
No, thank you so much for having me, guys, and have an amazing rest of your day as well.